likely unsustainable. Best case scenario from CG, you probably actualize yourself for a year at most. I am unclear specifically. Then,
yeah, like how long will it take you to get there?
What's going on?
You're muted.
Can I restart my speech? Someone's unmuted. Chair. To the person who's unmuted, first of all, please pause my timer. Secondly, to the person who's unmuted, please, could you mute?
I think it's the chair, and she's disappeared from call.
Okay.
Network is, must have dropped network wise.
Hello?
Chair, you dropped off.
Yes, hi. So sorry, I'm not audible now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chief Web, do you mind starting again, just so I get everything?
Preferably, I'd like to start again if that's okay.
Awesome. But before Chief Web starts, I hope everybody heard what I said about the fact that this is a silence round and that everybody should put their names and their roles in the text field. Nah.
Okay, cool. I just want to confirm that I'm clearly audible if I speak like this. Should I stand? I should stand. I feel better standing. Yeah. Am I audible? Hello? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
All right, cool. Cool. Prioritize closing for backup engagement. Please don't unmute at any point in my speech. Please don't unmute at any point in my speech. I will call for the POI, so just don't worry. Just hold on, hold your horses. Yeah. I'll start my speech, therefore, in 3, 2, 1. Panel, closing government is very redundant to this debate. I think just 3 things here. First, they say that the goal is not to reform the system. We agree it's less likely you reform the system. That's a really high burden. They say though that the goal is like to use these players as a means to an end. I'm just going to prove why this is unlikely to be done well. 2 specific responses here. In terms of sustainability, it's very unclear. Like even if we are to buy the chart from CG surrounding like pride and the idea that there's a duty of care that's owed to these specific nations, why is that duty of care likely to be sustainable? That's unclear. But secondly, the framing from TED becomes very strategic because it proves a couple of things here. I think first, we tell you that like the most proximate goal is not really to reform the state. We think that's just less likely given the structural issues that we have, and everyone concedes. The conversation then becomes on personal utility specifically. How can this player be actualized insofar as they are able to represent foreign nations anyway, and that sort of thing, right? I think the second thing here is in terms of like the development development gap. CG tell you that like the international community will not, the international community will not value you, and this becomes harmful to the state. The causal link is very unclear as to why this is likely. The way they try to impact this is to say, well, there's going to be a revolution. We think that's a bit ridiculous. That can't be the debate. Secondly, in terms of like what the comparator is, we think from CO, South Africa cannot be the comparator for this debate. Two strategic responses here. First, in terms of incentivizing players, we say that South Africa already highly incentivizes its players. The idea is that you're paid really well, and most of you already like compete on an international level. That cannot be the comparator. But thirdly, then, why then is this likely to fail and continue to fail and that sort of thing? There are two concerns from CG. That like at home you have both your career and your identity intact. Chair, this is not a game of either or, it's a very false binary. This is a game of margins specifically. Test extension on utility becomes really important because it proves to you how you break that deadlock of the extent of margins. I think to the extent where even CG concede and say that some people are going to stay anyway, I am unclear as to why then that exodus becomes like regrettable and whatnot. Let me engage the more relevant team on Gulf bench, which is OG. I don't think CG have a very sufficient extension to win the round, even if it's over OG. OG tell you a couple of things here. First, they say that you take attention away from Africa. The way they prove this is to say that you're representing the nation, and for some miraculous reason, you're going to, abandon your nationality and that sort of thing. Two problems with this. On factual error, we think things like dual citizenship still exist. Like people, like you can be a Senegalese, you can have like Senegalese nationality and at the same time still play for the French. I'm unclear if it's an either or. They cannot win on that comparative. Secondly, worst case scenario, even if people say like they're racist and at worst you're discriminated and you feel bad, we still think actualization happens anyway. Because of the same framing that they give you. Like you're already black, which means attention is on you simply because you're different. Second, on the perception gap, like I think we already proved to you why there's no reciprocal duty of care. So even if we had to buy the case from OG that the state invested in you and that sort of thing, we think the means through which you get to resolve this is what like is the way Ted analyzes to you, right? Like Africa wants to value retention and preservation of players. The way they're going to do this is the same thing that OG tells you. Like there's a higher incentive to invest in your local structures insofar as you fear like decreasing legitimacy and that sort of thing. But the second thing here is worst case scenario, they leave. At the very least, Ted is able to explain to you why they limit hemorrhaging and that sort of thing. On the preservation of economic harm, but second, on like the political power play, the political power play and coercive pressure that is then associated with that sort of thing. Second is a counterfactual from OG is very strange. They say that the counterfactual is, oh, you're going to join a club and that sort of thing. They don't necessarily prove why this is going to be effective for you as a person who, I think we've all agreed, is someone who's dedicated their life, is trained and has the highest caliber in terms of like engagement and whatnot, right? But secondly, surrounding the duty of care, we think it's very insufficient. Like at best, you probably represent your local club and that sort of thing. I'm unclear as to why that then translates into any meaningful benefit and that sort of thing. The third thing to note here is then the conversation surrounding I think the third thing here is then the conversation surrounding like colonialism and whatnot. The way OG tries to argue this is also very strange. They say that you're going to be perceived as less and the goal is to benefit from Africans. They don't do the link to prove why the counterfactual of like people staying means that Africans are going to benefit anyway, right? I think the second thing here is for this debate to function, we needed to have considered that like you can't change colonialism and slavery. Shit, it's already happened anyway. Two problems then become like I think the two things to evaluate this debate is then why is reparative duty simply like fulfilled by state? Because the way you'd probably have that fulfillment is probably by like giving back to your community. I think Ted already proves to you why this is still likely to happen anyway. Because you have you feel the need to do things like support your beneficiaries, even if the state does not benefit. We are okay with the state being fucked over as long as my mother and my father get food on their table. The second thing here is around national pride. Like at best, you feel nice about your Africanacity. The problem then with the case from OG is of what value does that become to the extent where the means through which you get to actualize that identity, i.e. exposure, i.e. talent building, i.e. capacity building, is actually harmed at that point. OG needed to do the legwork of assessing why the identity trade-off is something that becomes, like the identity trade-off is something that's unjustified, but second, why it becomes significant to the extent where it's less likely that they continue to like they will support you and continue to support you anyway, and that sort of thing. Why do we then beat opening? Opening opposition is correct to assume to explain why the outcomes are desirable, right? They don't engage though why that desirability is actualized to the highest degree. They make two contributions here. First, they say that there's an incentive to elevate your problems and a burden to self-actualize. Two problems here. First, I guess we already proved to you why the identity chart is non-comparative to the debate, specifically because your identity exists beyond your like your borders and your passport and whatnot, right? We think identity is likely to be preserved internally on two levels. A, on preservation, to the extent where there's already a high perception of like threat and whatnot to your identity, for the same reasons that OG told you, things like racism and sexism and that sort of thing. It then means that you have a greater incentive to preserve it at all points to the extent where there's a general consensus that you value that identity in all regards. The second thing, like I guess to note here is just the conversation surrounding like talent. I don't think that like OO prove why there's an incentive to actualize A within your capacity, B within your will, and C within like your competition and whatnot. We rest from CO.
Thank you very much for that. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Am I audible?
You're audible.
Yes, Chair.
Hi, am I audible? Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so
Yes.
much for that speech. All speakers, amazing round. Judges, let all speakers can join the main room. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a silent round. And good luck to all team.
you.